My wife screamed when I walked into the courtroom, because she had watched them bury me 3 years earlier. The sound ripped through the federal courtroom so sharply that chairs scraped against the polished floor. Reporters lowered their cameras. Even the judge paused halfway through arranging the files in front of him. I stood at the entrance. The scar beneath my left ribs was hidden under a dark suit. But I noticed it every morning. So did my left shoulder whenever it rained. Claire stared at me from behind the defense table. Her face had gone completely white. Her lips parted. But no sound came out. She still wore our wedding ring. For one brief second, I forgot where I was. Then years of training took over. Never lose focus. Always locate the exits first. The windows, the hands, the threats. My eyes swept across the room automatically before settling on the judge. "Special Agent Ethan Carter," I said calmly. "My testimony is ready." Silence. Complete silence. 3 years ago, the government had officially declared Ethan Carter dead. Today, that dead man was standing in federal court. The prosecutor assistant U.S. Attorney Elena Brooks rose from her seat. "Your Honor, the government calls Special Agent Ethan Carter." The judge studied me for several long seconds before nodding. "You may proceed." As I walked toward the witness stand, I deliberately avoided looking at Claire again. Not because I hated her, because I knew exactly what I would see. Shock, hope, guilt. None of them could change what had happened. I raised my right hand. "I swear that the testimony I am about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth." "You may be seated." The prosecutor approached. "Agent Carter, 3 years ago, what was your assignment?" "I was working undercover inside the Bennett trafficking organization." "How long had you been undercover?" 18 months. "Were you close to completing the operation?" "Yes." "The arrests were scheduled within 48 hours. A quiet murmur spread through the gallery. 18 months. One careless mistake. Everything destroyed. The prosecutor clicked a remote. A surveillance video appeared on the courtroom screen. A dark warehouse. Rain. 2 officers running toward a safe house. Then another figure appeared. Me. Younger. Unscarred. Still wearing my wedding ring. Gunfire exploded through the speakers. The footage shook violently. Someone in the gallery gasped. On the screen, I shoved an injured detective behind concrete cover while returning fire. Then my own voice echoed through the courtroom. "My wife knows nothing. Leave her out of this." Claire covered her mouth. Her shoulders began shaking. I didn't look at her. Couldn't, because I remembered exactly what happened after those words. 3 bullets. An explosion. Cold water. Darkness. The video stopped. The prosecutor changed the screen. One text message appeared. Nothing else. Just 9 words. "This is where Ethan's team will be." The prosecutor looked at me. "Agent Carter, do you recognize this message?" "Yes." "Was that location classified?" "Yes." "Did anyone outside law enforcement have authorization to know it?" "No." "Who sent the message?" The courtroom seemed to stop breathing. I finally turned toward Claire. She was already crying. Not dramatically. Simply. Broken. I answered anyway. "My wife." The prosecutor continued. "Please identify her for the record." I looked directly into Claire's eyes for the first time in 3 years. "Claire Carter." "No." Her voice barely existed. "No, Ethan. I didn't know. I thought." She couldn't finish. The prosecutor waited. Claire forced herself to continue. "I thought Luke was being moved. I thought I was saving his life." I remained silent. She looked at me desperately. "I didn't know it was your safe house. I didn't know. I swear to God." The entire courtroom waited for my response. I spoke quietly. "You gave them the address. Nothing more. Nothing less." Those 5 words carried 3 years of funeral surgeries, nightmares, and unanswered questions. Claire lowered her head. She had no answer. The judge called for a 15-minute recess. Deputies escorted me toward the witness room. I had almost reached the hallway when hurried footsteps echoed behind me. "Ethan." I stopped. Not because I wanted to, because hearing my name in her voice still affected me. "Please, please wait." I turned slowly. Claire stood several feet away. Older, more tired. The confidence she used to carry through hospital corridors had disappeared. She reached toward me instinctively. My body reacted before my mind could. I stepped backward, fast, far enough that her fingertips touched nothing but empty air. For a split second, confusion crossed her face, then realization, post-traumatic stress. She had just watched it happen. The flinch, the automatic retreat, the body remembering gunfire before the brain remembered the person. Her hand slowly dropped. You really thought She swallowed hard. You let me believe you were dead. I looked at her for several seconds, then answered with the only truth that mattered. You gave them the address. She closed her eyes. It sounded different this time, not like an accusation, like a verdict. Before either of us could speak again, the courtroom doors opened behind us. The prosecutor walked into the hallway carrying another evidence drive. We're ready for the next exhibit. Claire wiped her tears. What exhibit? The prosecutor didn't answer. She handed the drive to the court technician instead. A moment later, the hallway speakers crackled. An audio recording began to play. Static, gunfire, heavy breathing. Then a man's calm voice came through an earpiece, clear enough for everyone to hear. The wife confirmed the location. Claire froze. Her entire body went rigid. Another voice answered. Then finish Carter. Pause. Then the first voice spoke again. Bring me the drive. Claire's lips trembled. She whispered only one word. Luke. And for the first time since I had walked back into her life, she realized that the man she had tried to save had been the one ordering my execution. Claire had sent Luke 9 words that night. Those 9 words almost got me killed. 3 years earlier. Back then, I wasn't Special Agent Ethan Carter. To everyone inside the Bennett organization, I was simply Evan Cross, a transportation coordinator who knew how to move illegal cargo across 3 states without asking questions. It had taken 18 months to become that man. 18 months of lies. 18 months of pretending criminals were my friends. 18 months of wondering whether every goodbye to my wife would be my last. By then, I was only 48 hours away from ending the operation. I just had to survive 2 more days. I thought the hardest part was fooling the criminals. I was wrong. The hardest part was lying to Claire. When I walked through our front door that evening, the apartment smelled like tomato soup. Claire was already waiting. She smiled when she saw me. The smile disappeared almost immediately. There it is again. I looked down. A dark stain had spread across the sleeve of my gray shirt. Blood. Not mine. Mostly. I got caught in an accident at work, I said. She didn't answer. Instead, she walked into the bathroom, grabbed a wet towel, and silently cleaned the blood from my wrist. Her hands were gentle. Her eyes weren't. You've been coming home with new injuries every month. It's nothing. It never is. She looked directly at me. When was the last time you actually told me the truth? I wanted to answer. Couldn't. If I told her the truth, 18 months of undercover work would collapse overnight. If I stayed silent, I could already see her drifting further away. I'm working a long investigation, I finally said. You know I can't discuss it. She let go of my arm. I know. No. She forced a tired smile. I know that's what you always say. 2 days later, Claire was working the evening shift at Mercy Trauma Center. That was where Luke Bennett walked back into her life. He arrived just before sunset with a cut above his eyebrow and bruises on his ribs. Nothing life-threatening. Enough to look convincing. Claire recognized him immediately. Luke. He looked up slowly. His expression shifted from surprise to something softer. Claire. For a moment, neither of them spoke. 7 years disappeared. You became a nurse. You disappeared. He laughed quietly. I guess we both changed. Claire finished cleaning the wound. What happened? I made some dangerous people angry. She frowned. What kind of people? Luke hesitated. I probably shouldn't say. Claire looked at him. You can. He lowered his voice. I found evidence of police corruption. I was trying to expose it. They're trying to silence me. Claire's hands froze. Police corruption. Immediately she thought about me. The late nights. The unexplained injuries. The lies. Luke watched every change in her expression. He knew exactly which strings to pull. Before leaving the hospital, Luke stopped beside the doorway. If I disappear, he smiled sadly. Don't blame yourself. Claire looked confused. What does that mean? Nothing. I've already dragged enough people into this. He turned as if he were leaving, then stopped one last time. "Oh, I heard Ethan's been asking questions about me." Claire's eyes widened. "What?" Luke shrugged. "Maybe he's just doing his job. Or maybe someone wants me gone." He smiled again, the same smile that had made her fall in love in high school. "I shouldn't have bothered you." Then he walked away. He had never asked her to help. That was exactly why she wanted to. That night I came home after midnight. Claire was still awake. The television was off. The apartment was silent. She sat at the dining table, waiting. "Were you investigating Luke?" I stopped taking off my jacket. "What, were you?" I kept my expression calm. "I can't discuss active investigations." "So there is an investigation." "I didn't say that." "You didn't deny it." She stood. "Luke says someone is trying to frame him. Stay away from him." The words came out sharper than I intended. Claire stared at me. "Why? I can't explain." "Why not?" "Because I can't. Or because you don't trust me." I looked away. That silence answered the question for her. She laughed once. It wasn't amusement. It was disappointment. "I've been married to you for 7 years. And somehow, I know less about you now than I did on our honeymoon." She walked past me without another word. I remained standing in the kitchen long after she closed the bedroom door. The next afternoon, I left early for what Claire believed was another assignment. Before leaving, I placed a small velvet jewelry box inside my desk drawer. Inside was a new wedding ring. The old one she wore had become scratched after 7 years. I wanted to surprise her after the operation ended. I even left a handwritten note beside it. "After tonight, no more secrets." I never got the chance to give it to her. Claire spent most of that evening alone. Around 9 o'clock, her phone vibrated. "Luke, they're moving me tonight." Another message appeared seconds later. "I guess this is goodbye." Claire called immediately. He didn't answer. She tried again. Voicemail. Her heartbeat quickened. She remembered the bruises, the fear in his eyes. She remembered my warning. Stay away from him. To her, it sounded less like protection and more like a threat. She walked into my study. She had never searched my things before, not once in 7 years. But fear changes people. She opened my desk. Inside, she found my backup encrypted phone. The screen wasn't fully locked. A map was still open. One blinking location. No names. No explanation. Just coordinates. At that exact moment, her phone vibrated again. "Luke, I don't think I'll survive tonight." Claire closed her eyes. She believed she had only seconds to make a decision. She copied the coordinates, opened their old message thread, and typed 9 words. "This is where Ethan's team will be." She pressed send. 5 seconds later, Luke replied, "You just saved my life." Claire leaned back in relief. She truly believed she had done the right thing. She had no idea. She had just signed my death warrant. Luke stared at the message on his screen. His smile disappeared. So did every trace of warmth. He copied the coordinates, then dialed another number. The call connected after 1 ring. We found the undercover cop. The man on the other end spoke only 4 words. "Prepare the attack tonight." Luke looked out the window into the darkness. Understood. Then he quietly deleted Claire's messages and waited for the sound of gunfire that would change all of our lives forever. The first bullet hit me before I understood my wife had betrayed me. At 9:42 p.m., I pulled my truck behind an abandoned riverside warehouse. The place had been empty for years. Broken windows, rusted loading docks. A perfect location for a covert meeting. Marcus Reed was already waiting inside. He wore jeans instead of a suit and carried an old duffel bag that looked like it belonged to a mechanic instead of the head of a federal task force. "You made it," he said. "Barely." He noticed the fresh bruise beneath my jaw. "Another fight." "Routine inspection," I replied. Marcus smirked. "I'll miss your terrible jokes." I almost smiled. 48 hours. That's all we need." He nodded. "Then you disappear. No more undercover. No more Evan Cross. No more lies." The words felt unreal. For 18 months, I had lived someone else's life. In 48 hours, I could finally become Ethan Carter again. Marcus unzipped the duffel bag. Inside were ledgers, flash drives, burner phones, and photographs. "The entire financial network," he said. "Every shell company. every offshore account, every politician they paid. I slid my own encrypted drive across the table. Transportation routes, warehouse schedules, names. Marcus picked it up carefully. If this is authentic, it is. The Bennett organization is finished. For the first time in months, hope felt real. I reached into my jacket pocket. My fingers brushed against the small velvet ring box. Marcus noticed. You finally bought it. I nodded. Our 7th anniversary. He looked at me for a long moment. When are you giving it to Claire? Tomorrow night, when this operation ends. No more secrets. Marcus smiled. She deserves that. So do you. My phone buzzed. Not a call. Just a reminder I had scheduled weeks earlier. Voice memo send to Claire. I opened the recording. My own voice filled the quiet warehouse. Claire, if you're hearing this, it means I'm finally coming home. No more excuses. No more missed anniversaries. Whatever we've broken, we'll fix it together. I stopped the recording before it finished. Didn't send it, Marcus asked. Not yet. I wanted to tell her in person. He nodded. Good. Some things shouldn't be said through a phone. Neither of us knew that phone would never reach her. 9:58 p.m. Marcus packed the evidence into a waterproof case. I'll take the front exit. You leave through the back. Standard protocol. I checked my watch. 10 o'clock was only minutes away. Everything was on schedule, until every light inside the warehouse went out. Darkness swallowed the room. Marcus reacted instantly. Power failure. I already knew the answer. No. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. Some instincts come from training. Others come from surviving too many close calls. This wasn't an accident. I whispered one word. Run. The first window exploded before either of us moved. Gunfire tore through the warehouse. Glass rained across the floor. Concrete shattered beside my head. Back in trance, I shouted. Marcus grabbed the evidence case. I returned fire through the darkness. 3 attackers. No. 4. More footsteps outside. Too many. Someone knew exactly where we were. Someone knew exactly when we'd arrive. That thought hit harder than the bullets. The coordinates. Only a handful of people knew them. Marcus disappeared through the rear hallway. I stayed behind. If they chased him, 18 months of work would disappear forever. If they chased me, the evidence might survive. I kicked over a steel shelf, crashed across the doorway. Federal agents. Drop your weapons. No one answered. Only more gunfire. I ran deeper into the warehouse. Boots pounded behind me. A bullet slammed into my left shoulder. The impact spun me into a concrete pillar. Pain exploded through my arm. I fired twice. One attacker collapsed. The others kept coming. Their orders were clear. They weren't trying to arrest me. They were trying to erase me. I reached the loading dock. A white van blocked the exit. 2 gunmen jumped out. I dove behind a forklift. More bullets. Metal screamed. One round ripped through my side. Warm blood spread beneath my jacket. I gritted my teeth. Not now. Not tonight. Claire was waiting at home. Tomorrow I would give her the ring. Tomorrow I would tell her everything. I couldn't die 24 hours too early. A scream echoed nearby. Not from one of the gunmen. A child. I looked toward the sound. A delivery truck had crashed through the outer fence during the attack. A little boy, maybe 8 years old, was trapped behind the open driver's door. One attacker grabbed him and dragged him into the open. Human shield. I finally saw Luke. He stood across the yard beneath a floodlight. Calm. Watching. Our eyes met. He smiled. Then he spoke into his headset. Confirm the target. Another voice answered through the earpiece. Cold. Professional. The wife confirmed the location. For one frozen second, I didn't understand. Then everything became horribly clear. Claire. The coordinates. The safe house. She hadn't exposed my identity. She had exposed my location. She had never meant to betray me, but someone had used her to do exactly that. Luke raised his pistol. You should have stayed dead, Ethan. He knew. He had known all along. I had a clean shot. One pull of the trigger. Luke would never leave that warehouse alive. Then the child cried again. The gunman tightened his grip around the boy's neck. I lowered my aim. Instinct won. It always did. I fired at the gunman instead. The The child broke free and ran. Luke disappeared into the darkness. The third bullet struck me from behind. My knees hit the ground. The fourth never came. Instead, the warehouse exploded. A wall of fire erupted behind me. The blast threw me through the loading dock railing. My watch smashed against the steel guardrail. The glass cracked. The hands stopped moving. 10:17. I hit the freezing river below. The current swallowed me instantly. My pistol slipped from my hand. My vision blurred. Above the water, I could still see the burning warehouse. I could still hear distant shouting. I could still hear Marcus calling my name. Then I saw someone standing on the riverbank. A man, gray overcoat, hands in his pockets. He wasn't helping. He wasn't running. He was simply watching me disappear beneath the water. As the river pulled me under, the moonlight reflected off a single golden cufflink on his sleeve. I had seen that cufflink once before. Years ago, the night my father was murdered. Claire's first lie did not betray me, her second one nearly made sure no one found me. 3 years earlier, Claire never remembered driving from the apartment to the police command center. Later, she would remember every traffic light, every siren, every drop of rain, but not the drive itself. Her hands never stopped shaking. She still believed there had been some terrible misunderstanding. Someone would explain everything. Ethan would walk through the door. He always did. Detective Marcus Reed met her in a small interview room. He looked exhausted. There was dried blood on the sleeve of his jacket. Not his blood. Claire stood the moment he entered. "Where's Ethan?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. Instead, he placed a sealed evidence bag on the table. Inside was Ethan's badge, his service pistol, his wallet. Claire stared at them. "No." Marcus finally spoke. "There was an attack at a federal safe house." The room seemed to tilt. "A safe house?" She frowned. "I thought Ethan was working narcotics." Marcus looked directly at her. He wasn't just working narcotics. He was undercover. The words hit harder than any physical blow. Claire blinked. "Undercover." Marcus nodded. "For 18 months. She shook her head. "No, that's impossible. He would have told me." He couldn't. The fewer people who knew, the greater his chances of staying alive. Alive. Claire caught that word immediately. "So he's alive." Marcus didn't answer. Silence was answer enough. Marcus slid another document across the table. A satellite map. A single red circle marked one abandoned warehouse beside the river. Claire froze. She recognized it instantly. Those coordinates. The same coordinates she had copied from Ethan's encrypted phone. The same coordinates she had sent to Luke. Her breathing became uneven. What is this place?" Marcus answered quietly. "Our rendezvous point. Ethan was meeting me there." Claire stared at him. Her face lost all color. No, I thought." She couldn't finish. Marcus leaned forward. "What did you think?" She looked away. Nothing made sense anymore. Luke had said he was being transferred. Luke had said corrupt officers wanted him dead. Luke had said Ethan was involved. Every decision she had made suddenly collapsed beneath her. Marcus noticed her reaction. His voice became sharper. "Claire, did you tell anyone about this location?" Her heart pounded. She could still see Luke's message. "You just saved my life." She swallowed. No. The lie came out almost automatically. Marcus watched her carefully. "Did you contact Lucas Bennett in the last 24 hours?" Again. No. Another lie. She hated how easily it came. Not because she wanted to protect Luke. Because admitting the truth meant admitting she might have helped kill her own husband. She wasn't ready to face that. Neither was Marcus. He stood. "We'll verify the phone records." Claire nodded without looking at him. By then, she already knew what they would find. Outside, the command center reporters crowded behind police barricades. Camera flashes exploded. Questions flew from every direction. "Mrs. Carter, did your husband survive? Were you aware he was undercover? Did Ethan Carter have enemies?" Claire couldn't answer. A female officer escorted her through the crowd. Inside the patrol car, her phone vibrated. "Luke." She stared at his name, then answered. His voice sounded weak, almost relieved. "Claire, thank God you're okay." Tears filled her eyes. "Luke." Ethan, my husband. Luke interrupted softly. I heard. I'm so sorry. She covered her mouth. I didn't know. I didn't know that place belonged to him. I swear I didn't know. There was a long silence. Then Luke sighed. They used both of us. Claire frowned. What? I thought they were moving me. They must have lied to me too. I would have never asked for help if I'd known. His voice cracked at exactly the right moment. I destroyed your marriage. No, Claire whispered. It wasn't your fault. I made the choice. Luke answered immediately. No, they manipulated us. They wanted Ethan gone. They wanted us blaming each other. Claire closed her eyes. For the first time since the attack, someone was giving her permission not to hate herself. And she desperately wanted to believe him. 3 days later, the search officially ended. The river had been searched for miles. Divers found fragments of the explosion, pieces of burned metal, blood, but no body. The government declared Ethan Carter presumed dead. Claire didn't cry when they told her. She simply nodded, as if tears belonged to someone else's life. The memorial service was held 1 week later. Police officers lined both sides of the chapel. A folded American flag rested beside Ethan's portrait. Claire sat in the front row, still wearing her wedding ring. Luke sat quietly beside her. He never touched her, never held her hand, never asked to sit there. He simply stayed close enough that whenever another reporter approached, he stepped in first. I'll handle it, he would say, and he always did, to everyone else. He looked like a loyal old friend helping a grieving widow. After the ceremony, Marcus approached Claire. He carried one final evidence box. These belonged to Ethan. Claire accepted it with trembling hands. Inside were his wallet, his badge, a burned leather notebook, and an old mechanical watch. The crystal was shattered. The hands had stopped forever. 10:17. Claire ran her thumb across the cracked glass. She noticed a tiny button on the side. She pressed it. A hidden recording began to play. Ethan's tired voice filled the silence. Claire, when this is over, we need to talk. I'm tired of coming home as half a husband. The recording ended. Claire broke. Not loudly, not dramatically. She lowered her forehead onto the evidence box and sobbed for the first time since the attack. Marcus watched in silence. He said nothing, because he knew something Claire did not. That watch had been recovered, but Ethan's wedding ring had never been found. At that exact moment, more than 200 miles away, inside a heavily guarded underground surgical facility, bright operating lights illuminated a blood-soaked table. A surgeon pressed both hands against my chest. BP is crashing. Another doctor looked at the heart monitor. We're losing him. The lead surgeon never looked up. She reached for another clamp. Charge again. A federal agent standing beside the operating room door asked quietly, Dr. Brooks, if he survives, will he ever be able to testify? The surgeon cut away another piece of damaged tissue. Only then did she answer, without hesitation. First, he has to survive the next 60 seconds. I woke up without a badge, without a name, and without a wife I could trust. Darkness came first, then pain. Not sharp pain, heavy pain. The kind that made every breath feel borrowed. Something pressed against my face. A ventilator. I tried to move. Nothing happened. My left arm refused to respond. A machine somewhere above me began beeping faster. Someone noticed. He's awake. Footsteps rushed toward the bed. Bright surgical lights flooded my eyes. I tried to speak. Only air escaped. A woman with short black curls stepped into my view. She looked younger than I expected. Calm, focused. She didn't smile. She checked the monitor first, then my pupils, then my chest tube. Only after she finished did she look directly at me. I'm Dr. Maya Brooks. You've been unconscious for 11 days. I blinked once. 11 days. The last thing I remembered was freezing water. The explosion. 10:17. The child. Luke. Then, nothing. Another figure entered the room. Marcus. He looked older. His beard hadn't been shaved in days. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked guilty. You stubborn bastard, he muttered. You almost made me write your obituary. I tried to ask what had happened. The breathing tube stopped me. Maya noticed. Don't. You'll tear the stitches. She adjusted the ventilator. You lost a great deal of blood. 3 gunshot wounds. Collapsed lung. 2 cardiac arrests. She spoke as though she were reading a grocery list. No drama, just facts. Then she added one more. You survived. 2 days later, the breathing tube came out. The first breath burned. The second hurt even more. Maya handed me a plastic breathing device. 10 repetitions every hour. I stared at it. I've been shot. She nodded. And now you're recovering. These are 2 different jobs. I almost laughed. Instead, I coughed hard enough to reopen one of my stitches. She waited until the coughing stopped, then handed the device back. Again, that afternoon Marcus closed the hospital room door. For the first time, he looked like my commanding officer instead of my friend. We announced your death. The room fell silent. I looked at him. What? The Bennett organization believes you died in the explosion. So does the public. So does Claire. He waited for me to react. I didn't. Not immediately. Instead, I asked the only question that mattered. Is she safe? Marcus lowered his eyes. Yes. I nodded once. Good. He didn't answer. Instead, he placed a tablet on my bed. The screen showed a screenshot. A familiar message thread. Claire. Luke. And beneath it, the coordinates. This is where Ethan's team will be. I stared at the words. 9 simple words. 9 words that had nearly ended my life. Marcus finally spoke. We recovered Luke's burner phone. The message was still cached. I kept looking at the screen, waiting for it to become fake. It never did. I don't think she knew, Marcus said quietly. I know. The answer surprised even me. He frowned. You know. I closed my eyes. She would have never wanted me dead. Marcus remained silent, but she chose to trust him. The sentence hurt far more than the bullets. Not because Claire had betrayed me, because she had believed someone else before believing me. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Finally, Marcus reached into another folder. I wasn't going to show you this. He handed me another report. Claire's interview transcript. Every answer, every denial, every lie. No, I didn't contact Luke. No, I never shared any information. I read every line. Twice. She had lied. Not only to me, to the people trying to find me. Marcus spoke carefully. That delayed the investigation. We lost almost 8 hours before tracing Luke's phone. 8 hours. I had been floating somewhere downriver, bleeding, alone. 8 hours. I set the tablet aside. For the first time since waking. Couldn't breathe. Not because of my lungs. Because my chest suddenly felt heavier than the bandages wrapped around it. Maya entered quietly. She looked from Marcus, to me, to the untouched breathing device. She understood immediately. What happened? Marcus answered. He saw the messages. She nodded once, then looked at me. You can hate her later. I looked up. She continued. Right now. She picked up the breathing trainer and placed it in my hand. Breathe. There wasn't a trace of pity in her voice. Only expectation. As though surviving was no longer optional. Recovery became my full-time job. Every morning began the same way. Breathing exercises. Standing. Walking. Falling. Standing again. My left hand barely worked. My shoulder screamed every time I lifted it. The scars across my ribs stretched every time I inhaled. Some days I managed 5 steps. Other days, 2 felt impossible. Whenever I grew frustrated, Maya never told me I was doing well. She simply asked, again. And somehow, I always tried again. One evening after another failed attempt to walk without assistance, I sat staring through the reinforced hospital window. I became a cop because I thought justice fixed things. Maya didn't look up from my chart. No, you became a cop because something broke you first. I looked at her. She finally met my eyes. What happened? I hadn't spoken about it in years. My father. He was killed during a convenience store robbery. The case was never solved. My mother drank herself into forgetting. I spent the rest of my life trying to make sure nobody else lost someone they loved. Maya listened without interrupting. When I finished, she closed the file. That's a good reason to become a police officer. She paused. It's a terrible reason to destroy yourself. I looked away. She added quietly, make sure justice doesn't turn you into one of the people you're chasing. Her words stayed with me long after she left the room. 6 weeks later, I stood without assistance for the first time. Only 30 seconds, but I stayed standing. Marcus smiled. About time. Then his expression became serious. I need to show you something. He opened a laptop, a memorial service, police uniforms, an American flag. Claire sat in the front row, still wearing our wedding ring. Luke sat beside her, not touching her, not holding her hand, just close enough that whenever reporters approached, he stepped between her and the cameras. Claire leaned toward him for support. I watched the screen without speaking. Marcus closed the laptop. I'm sorry. I slowly released my grip on the walker. It fell onto the floor with a loud metallic crash. Neither of us picked it up. Marcus waited. Maybe he expected me to cry. Maybe he expected me to yell. Instead, I asked one question. When can I go back to work? Marcus stared at me for several seconds, then reached into his briefcase. He placed an old case file on the hospital bed. The paper had yellowed with age. Dust clung to the edges. Across the top, one name was typed in black ink. Robert Carter, my father. I looked at Marcus. He pointed to the final page. The case was reopened last month. Someone requested the file. I turned to the last document. One signature appeared beneath the request. Nathan Vale. The name meant nothing to me. Not yet, but somehow, I already knew my father's death had never really been left behind. While I learned to walk again, Luke moved into the life I had died protecting. 3 months after the explosion, I could finally walk across the rehabilitation room without a cane. Slowly, painfully, but I could walk. Marcus called it progress. Maya called it expected. Neither of them mentioned the nightmares. Those still came every night. The warehouse, the explosion, Claire's message. 10:17. Sometimes I woke reaching for a wedding ring that wasn't on my hand anymore. Marcus arrived one afternoon carrying another encrypted laptop. I debated whether to show you this. I decided lies got us here. He placed the computer in front of me. Security footage appeared. Date: 3 weeks after my memorial service. Location: my house, or rather, the house Claire still believed belonged to the two of us. Luke stood on a ladder outside. He was repairing a broken section of the rain gutter. Claire opened the front door. You didn't have to come. Luke smiled. I was nearby. You mentioned the leak. I figured I'd fix it. He climbed down before she could object. He never stepped inside until she invited him. Marcus paused the video. See what he's doing. I nodded. He makes her think every decision is hers. Marcus looked at me. He never pushes. He waits. Then lets guilt do the work. Another recording. Different week. Different day. Claire sat across from Luke in a quiet cafe. She looked exhausted. She hadn't slept. The wedding ring was still on her finger. Luke noticed it. He smiled sadly. You should keep wearing it. Claire looked surprised. What? Ethan would have wanted that. She lowered her eyes. I don't know what he would have wanted anymore. Luke shook his head. I think I do. He loved you. You don't stop loving someone because they die. Claire's eyes filled with tears. Luke didn't reach across the table. He didn't touch her hand. He simply sat there, waiting. Eventually, Claire reached for her coffee. Not for him. That restraint made him seem trustworthy. It was calculated. Every second. Maya walked into the room carrying my therapy schedule. She glanced at the frozen video. You're watching her. I didn't deny it. I need to understand. No. She folded her arms. You want to punish yourself. I looked away. She continued. Those are different things. Over the following months, Luke became part of Claire's routine. He drove her father's prescriptions across town. He reminded her to eat during long hospital shifts. When her kitchen sink backed up, he fixed it. When the insurance company delayed Ethan's death benefits, he recommended a lawyer, Nathan Vale, a respected attorney, a family friend, someone who had known Claire's parents for years. At the time, none of us realized Nathan had already positioned himself inside her life, exactly where he wanted to be. One evening, Marcus entered my room with another report. Nathan handled everything: the insurance, the probate paperwork, the legal declaration of death. I frowned. He volunteered. Marcus nodded. Without charging her. That bothered me. People like Nathan Vale didn't work for free. Not unless they expected something more valuable later. Meanwhile, Claire kept going to work. She saved strangers every day, then returned to an empty house every night. She still talked to my photograph. The surveillance audio picked up fragments. I'm sorry. I should have trusted you. I wish you'd yelled at me. You never yelled. I turned the recording off. I couldn't listen anymore. About 6 months after the explosion, Luke visited again. This time he carried a small cardboard box. I found this in the garage. Claire frowned. I've never seen it before. It was hidden behind the workbench. She carried it into the living room. Inside was a compact steel safe. No key, no label, just my initials. You see, Claire stared at it for a long time. I didn't know he had this. Luke spoke gently. Maybe Marcus knows the combination. She hesitated. No, I'll figure it out. 3 days later, a locksmith opened the safe. Marcus had already copied everything inside. He wanted to know whether Claire would discover the truth on her own. She did. There were no secret bank accounts, no hidden passports, no evidence that I had been corrupt. Only a neatly organized stack of folders. The first one contained every payment I had made toward her father's heart surgery. The second, receipts from her therapy after the miscarriage. She had never known I attended every appointment from the parking lot because I couldn't risk entering the building while undercover. The third folder, the promotion letter I had declined. Salary increase, leadership position, transfer to headquarters. Signed, rejected, reason, family first. Claire covered her mouth. I never. She couldn't finish. At the bottom of the safe lay a jewelry receipt. Custom wedding ring. Purchased 2 weeks before our anniversary. Delivery date. The morning after the warehouse attack. Beneath it rested a half-finished letter. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. Claire, you keep asking why I don't tell you what I'm carrying. The truth is, I'm afraid if I put any more weight on you, you'll leave. The letter ended there. No signature. No goodbye. Just unfinished words. Claire finally broke. Not quietly. Not gracefully. She slid onto the floor beside the open safe and cried until she couldn't breathe. I watched every second. I felt nothing at first. Then something worse than anger. Regret. Not for hiding my job. For believing love meant carrying everything alone. Maya noticed my expression. You still think this is your fault. I kept too many secrets. She shook her head. And she opened the one secret that wasn't hers. Neither of us spoke after that. A week later, Claire asked Luke to meet her. This time, she didn't cry. She placed the unfinished letter on the cafe table. You told me Ethan never trusted me. Luke looked at the paper. He didn't. She stared at him. He gave up his promotion. He paid for my father's surgery. He bought another wedding ring. Luke remained silent. Finally, he sighed. I think Ethan may have been undercover. Claire froze. You knew. I suspected. His voice cracked perfectly. But I didn't know they were going to kill him. I swear. He lowered his head. I thought Nathan was only trying to protect everyone. A tear rolled down his cheek. If I'd known, I would have stopped it. Claire wanted to believe him. Part of her still did. Because accepting the alternative meant admitting she had trusted the wrong man from the beginning. She left the cafe without another word. Luke watched her walk away. His expression remained heartbroken until she disappeared around the corner. Then he picked up his phone. One call, one ring. Nathan answered. Luke smiled. She found the safe. A brief silence followed. Then Nathan's calm voice came through the speaker. Then it's time to make her the suspect. The police arrested Claire at the hospital in front of 12 patients and the father she had tried to protect. 3 years after the warehouse explosion. I watched it happen through a live surveillance feed. Claire had just finished stitching a teenage construction worker's arm. She smiled at the boy, told him he'd keep the scar, told him girls usually liked scars. The kid laughed. For a brief moment, she looked like the woman I had married. Then the elevator doors opened. 4 federal agents stepped into the emergency department. Every conversation stopped. The waiting room fell silent. The lead agent unfolded a warrant. Claire Carter. She looked up. Yes, we have a federal warrant for your arrest. Every face in the department turned toward her. A little girl clutched her mother's hand. The teenager Claire had just treated stared in disbelief. Her father had arrived only minutes earlier to drive her home after her shift. He stood frozen beside the reception desk. Claire blinked. There has to be some mistake. The agent remained calm. You are under arrest for conspiracy to obstruct a federal investigation, money laundering, and assisting an organized criminal enterprise. The words echoed through the emergency room. Money laundering. Claire frowned. What? I've never. Another agent placed photographs on the counter. Bank transfers, investment accounts, offshore deposits. Every one of them, under Claire Carter's name. She stared at the paperwork. I've never seen these. We know. The lead agent answered. But they're real. Her father stepped forward. My daughter is a nurse. She spent 15 years saving lives. She doesn't even know how offshore banking works. The agents remained professional. You can tell that to the prosecutor. They placed handcuffs around Claire's wrists. She didn't resist. She couldn't, because somewhere inside, she already knew exactly who had done this. Luke, I watched everything beside Marcus inside the Federal Command Center. Neither of us spoke. Finally, I asked, did she know? Marcus shook his head. No. The money started moving 18 months before the attack. They built the trail long before she needed to be framed. I looked at the screen. Luke hadn't simply manipulated Claire. He had been preparing to sacrifice her from the beginning. Luke had disappeared. His apartment was empty. His office had been professionally cleaned. Every hard drive missing. Every security camera disabled. Only one thing remained. A framed photograph. Luke, Claire, high school graduation. Marcus stared at it. He always planned an exit. 2 days later, Nathan Vale entered the detention center carrying an expensive leather briefcase. Claire looked exhausted. She hadn't slept. The interrogation room door closed behind him. He smiled kindly. I'm sorry we had to meet like this. Claire whispered. Did Luke send you? Nathan adjusted his glasses. No, I'm here because your father asked for help. He placed legal documents on the table. I've already reviewed the evidence. Claire looked hopeful. You believe me? I do. He paused. But believing you won't save you. He leaned forward. The government needs someone to blame. They've lost Ethan. They've lost Luke. Now they've chosen you. Claire's breathing became uneven. What do I do? Nathan answered softly. There is one option. He slid another document across the table. Prepared statement. If you acknowledge that Ethan was secretly working with the Bennett organization, the prosecution loses its foundation. Claire stared at him. What? Nathan continued in the same gentle tone. You don't have to say he was evil, only compromised. He lied to you. He hid everything. He manipulated your marriage. You were another victim. They'll offer a reduced sentence. Claire looked down at the paper. For several minutes, she said nothing. Nathan waited. He never pressured. Just like Luke, he understood silence could be more persuasive than arguments. Behind a one-way mirror, I watched every second. Marcus stood beside me. Neither of us moved. Nathan had just offered Claire the easiest escape of her life. Blame the dead husband. Walk away. Marcus quietly asked, do you want me to stop this? I shook my head. No, I need to know. Claire picked up the pen. She read the statement again. Then she looked up. My husband lied. Nathan smiled slightly. She continued. He lied to protect an investigation. Nathan's smile grew. Then Claire folded the statement in half. Carefully, neatly, she placed it back on the table. Luke lied to protect himself. She looked Nathan directly in the eyes. My husband lied to protect an investigation. Luke lied to protect himself. Those are not the same thing. Nathan's expression changed for the first time. Only slightly, but I saw it. Disappointment. Claire pushed the unsigned confession back toward him. I won't call Ethan corrupt. Not because he was my husband, because it isn't true. Nathan remained silent. Then he smiled again. A smaller smile, almost disappointed. You've made a difficult choice. Claire nodded. I know, but it's mine. Nathan gathered his papers. Before leaving, he stopped at the door. You should have signed it. Claire frowned. Without turning around, Nathan answered, "Because the truth rarely protects anyone." Then he walked away. Marcus slowly released a breath. She finally chose correctly. I kept staring through the glass. 3 years too late. The words hurt to say, because they were true. That evening, couldn't sleep. Maya found me sitting alone outside the observation room. She handed me a paper cup of coffee. Didn't ask why I was there. Didn't tell me to go home. She simply sat beside me. After several minutes, I said, "She finally defended me." Maya nodded. "I know." I looked at the untouched coffee. I waited years to hear those words. She remained quiet, then asked, "Did they change what happened?" I closed my eyes. "No." She took a sip of her coffee. "People can grow. They just can't grow backward." I laughed quietly. The first real laugh I'd had in months. That's a terrible sentence. It is, but it's accurate. Neither of us spoke again. The silence didn't feel empty, felt shared. Near midnight, Marcus rushed into the room holding a digital recorder. We recovered something. He pressed play. Static filled the room. Then Luke's voice emerged. Calm, confident, older than the recordings Claire had heard. I told the old man, "Carter keeps asking questions." A second voice answered. Deep, controlled. "The boy should have died with his father." Luke chuckled. "He almost did." The second voice continued. "He doesn't know who pulled the trigger. He never will." Luke laughed again. "He became a cop because of that robbery." Poetic, isn't it? The recording ended. The room became perfectly still. Marcus slowly lowered the recorder. "We've authenticated the voices." Couldn't breathe. Not because of anger, because the second voice connected two tragedies separated by 26 years. The warehouse, my father, the same organization, the same people. Marcus looked at me carefully. "Ethan." I was already walking toward the interrogation room. For the first time in 3 years, I had forgotten my injuries, forgotten the scars, forgotten Claire. I pushed the interrogation room door open. Inside, Claire looked up. Her face went completely white. The woman who had buried me was staring at the man she thought had died. Claire reached for me. I stepped back before she could touch the scars she had helped put on my body. For 3 years, Claire had imagined this moment 1,000 different ways. None of them looked like reality. She stood so quickly that her chair crashed onto the concrete floor. "Ethan." Her voice broke halfway through my name. She took one step toward me, then another. Tears streamed down her face before she realized she was crying. Her hands reached for my chest, for my face, for proof that I was real. I stepped backward, just one step, but it was enough. Her hands froze in the air, between us, unwanted. She couldn't breathe. "They told me. I buried you." I looked at her quietly. "You buried an empty coffin." Silence swallowed the room. Marcus quietly closed the interrogation room door. No cameras, no lawyers, only the two of us, and 3 years of unfinished words. Claire wiped her face. "I'm sorry." I didn't answer. She tried again. "I'm so sorry." Still, nothing. She finally whispered, "I don't even know where to start." I pulled out a chair, sat across from her, then asked the first question. Not loudly, not angrily, simply, calmly. "Why did you send Luke the address?" She lowered her head immediately. I thought, her voice shook. "I thought he was going to die. I thought corrupt officers were moving him." "You saw my encrypted phone." "Yes." "You unlocked it." "Yes." "You copied the coordinates." "Yes." She squeezed her eyes shut. "I thought I was saving someone." I nodded once. "I know." She looked up hopefully. "You know, I know you weren't trying to kill me." Hope appeared on her face, then disappeared as I continued. "You just chose to trust another man over your husband." Her shoulders collapsed. I asked the second question. "When Marcus asked whether you'd contacted Luke, why did you lie?" Claire stared at the table. "I was afraid." "Of what?" She answered almost immediately. "If I admitted what I'd done, then it would have been real. I couldn't survive knowing I'd helped destroy my own marriage." I looked at her. "No, you couldn't survive taking responsibility." She flinched, but she didn't argue. For the first time, she accepted the sentence exactly as I had spoken it. The third question came even more quietly. Why did you keep believing Luke after my memorial? Claire closed her eyes. I don't know. I waited. Eventually she whispered, because every time I started blaming myself, he gave me another explanation. He said we'd both been manipulated. He said someone else planned everything. He said you probably understood. She looked at me. I wanted him to be telling the truth. I nodded. I know. Her eyes filled with tears again. You know, I know what hope looks like. I leaned back in my chair. It just isn't an excuse. One last question remained. The only one that had haunted me while floating down that river, while learning to breathe again, while learning to walk again, while watching another man live inside my home. I looked directly into her eyes. Why didn't you trust me? The room became perfectly still. Claire opened her mouth, closed it again. Finally, she answered honestly. You stopped letting me into your life. You disappeared for days. You came home bleeding. You wouldn't explain anything. I started feeling like I was married to someone who didn't need me. She paused, then continued. And Luke needed me. I nodded slowly. I know. She looked relieved. Until I spoke again. I needed you to trust me. The sentence landed harder than shouting ever could. Claire began crying again. You shut me out. I held her gaze. And you opened the door. For the man trying to kill me. Neither of us spoke after that. Because there wasn't anything left to argue about. Only consequences. Several minutes passed. Claire finally whispered, if I could trade places with you, I would. I believed her. That was the tragedy. 3 years ago, I wouldn't have questioned her sincerity. Today, it didn't change anything. I know. She looked confused. You believe me? Yes. I believe you regret it. I paused. But regret doesn't reverse choices. Claire slowly reached into her pocket. She removed our wedding ring. She still wore it. 3 years later, she placed it on the table between us. I never stopped wearing it. I kept thinking, if you were somehow alive, you'd find your way home. I looked at the ring. The gold was scratched, just like the one I'd worn, just like our marriage. She finally asked the question she'd been holding since I walked through the door. Ethan, do you still love me? The room became silent again. Marcus stood outside the door. I knew he could hear every word. Maya was somewhere farther down the hallway, waiting, not listening, just waiting. I looked at Claire for a long time, long enough that hope slowly returned to her face. Then, I answered, the man who loved you. I stopped. My fingers brushed the scar beneath my shirt. Died at 10:17. Claire stared at me, as though she'd forgotten how to breathe. No, Ethan, please. I shook my head. The man sitting in front of you remembers loving you. He remembers wanting to spend the rest of his life with you. He remembers buying another wedding ring. He remembers recording a message promising he'd come home. I swallowed, but that man never came out of the river. Claire covered her mouth. A broken sound escaped her. It wasn't crying anymore. It was grief. The kind that finally arrives after denial dies. I reached into my jacket, removed a small velvet box, placed it beside her ring. Claire stared at it. Slowly, she opened it. Inside rested the new wedding band, untouched, perfect, exactly as I'd bought it 3 years earlier. A receipt still lay folded beneath it. She looked up at me through tears. I bought this because I thought worn things could be repaired. I smiled. Not happily, just sadly. I thought marriages worked the same way. She couldn't even speak. Then I placed one final document on the table. A divorce agreement, already signed. Claire stared at my signature. Her vision blurred. No, Ethan. No, I'll wait. I'll spend the rest of my life making this right. You don't have to forgive me. Just don't leave. I looked at her quietly. I already did. 3 years ago. Neither of us needed to say it aloud. We both knew exactly when. 10:17. She reached for my hand. This time, I didn't step back. I simply didn't reach back. That hurt her even more, because indifference weighed more than anger. I'm sorry. She whispered it again. I know. I'll never stop being sorry. I know. I never stopped loving you. I closed the velvet box. I believe you. She looked up. Hope flickered again. Then I finished. But love without trust is only another way to lose someone. I stood. Claire remained frozen in her chair. As I reached the door, she called my name one last time. Ethan. I stopped, without turning around. She whispered, I kept waiting for you to come home. I closed my eyes, then answered, I did. A long pause followed. You just weren't the person I could come home to anymore. I opened the door. Maya was waiting outside. She wasn't leaning against the wall dramatically. She wasn't pretending not to notice. She simply stood there with 2 paper cups of coffee. When she saw me, she didn't ask how the conversation went. She didn't ask if I was okay. She only asked one question. Do you want company or silence? I looked back once. Through the small window in the interrogation room door, Claire still sat alone, holding the ring I had never been able to give her, crying over a marriage that had ended long before either of us admitted it. Then I looked at Maya. For the first time in a long time, I don't want to be alone. She handed me 1 cup. Then let's walk. We started down the hallway together. No touching, no promises, just 2 people walking in the same direction. Behind us, Claire lowered her forehead onto the table. For the second time in her life, she cried for the man she loved. The difference was, this time, he was still alive, and she had lost him anyway. That night, the detention center alarms suddenly erupted. Red lights flooded every corridor. Marcus's phone rang. He answered immediately. His expression changed. What happened? A frightened voice came through the speaker. Lucas Bennett escaped federal custody. Marcus looked directly at me. He left a message. What message? Marcus read the note recovered from Luke's empty cell. 3 lines. Nothing more. Claire knows where Ethan will testify. I felt every muscle in my body tighten. The trial wasn't over. It had only just begun. Luke kidnapped Claire because even after everything he still believed she would choose him. The first sign was her wedding ring. Federal agents found it on the floor of the detention center parking garage. A thin gold band, scratched from 7 years of marriage, placed carefully beside the rear tire of an abandoned sedan. Not dropped. Left. Claire wanted us to know she had been taken. Marcus held the evidence bag beneath the fluorescent light. He entered through the service tunnel, disabled 2 cameras, used a stolen maintenance badge. I studied the garage footage. Luke wore a baseball cap and hospital scrubs. He kept his head down. Claire walked beside him. No visible restraints, no struggle. To anyone watching from a distance, they looked like 2 employees leaving after a late shift. But Claire's right hand remained pressed against her coat. A gun. Luke had kept it against her ribs. Where would he take her? Marcus asked. I already knew. Not because I understood Luke, because I understood Claire. The Bellwether Theater. Marcus frowned. The abandoned one. She and Luke went there in high school. They used to sit in the balcony after rehearsals. He reached for his radio. I stopped him. He'll expect us to rush. He wants me angry. Marcus stared at me. Your wife has a gun against her. My former wife. The correction sounded cold. Necessary. Then I added. And Luke knows exactly what I do when someone needs saving. Marcus understood. He had watched me do it my entire career. Run first. Think later. Carry everyone else. Even when it destroyed me. Not this time. We do it by protocol, I said. Full team. Bomb squad. Perimeter first. Marcus nodded. No argument. That was how I knew I had changed. Inside the Bellwether Theater, Luke had prepared a reunion. Claire sat in the center of the old stage. Dust covered the floor. Red curtains hung in torn strips. But a small table had been arranged beneath a working spotlight. On it sat a bottle of red wine, 2 glasses, a stack of high school photographs, and an old portable speaker. Their song played softly through the empty building. Luke removed his jacket. He placed the gun beside the wine, close enough to reach, far enough to appear harmless. Do you remember this place? He asked. Claire looked around. I remember who I was here. Luke smiled. Before Ethan. She looked at him. No, before I knew what you were. His smile weakened. Only for a second. Then it returned. I saved you from prison. You framed me. I gave you a way out. You put the money in my name. Luke poured the wine. You always hated financial paperwork. I knew you wouldn't notice. Claire stared at him. He said it as if remembering a harmless habit. That was Luke's gift. He could turn cruelty into intimacy. He handed her a glass. Claire didn't take it. Luke sighed. You still think Ethan is coming? I know he is. Of course he is. His tone carried no fear, only confidence. He always comes when you call. Claire's expression tightened. Luke sat across from her. I used to admire that about him. You tried to murder him. I tried to remove an obstacle. The words left his mouth without emotion. Claire went still. Luke watched her reaction, then leaned closer. You want the truth. You deserve it. He picked up one of their graduation photographs. You were never supposed to send me the address. I only needed you to confirm Ethan had access to protected information. Claire's face lost color. You knew he was undercover. I suspected. When you sent the coordinates, I knew. She stared at him. You told me you were being transferred. I told you what you needed to hear. Her breathing became shallow. Luke continued. The organization wanted Ethan dead. Nathan wanted the evidence destroyed. And you wanted. Claire's voice broke. What did you want? Luke smiled sadly. You. She shook her head. No. You wanted control. His expression changed. The tenderness disappeared. You say that because Ethan taught you to distrust passion. Ethan never told me what to feel. He barely told you anything. And you used every silence against him. Luke leaned back. I gave you a choice. No. Claire's voice became stronger. You created a crisis. You lied. You waited for me to panic. Then you made me believe your survival depended on betraying my husband. Luke's jaw tightened, but he stayed calm. You still made the decision. Claire looked directly at him. Yes, for the first time. She did not hide behind confusion. I did. I sent the address. I lied to the police. I kept believing you because the truth made me ashamed. Luke smiled, as if her confession proved his point. Then you understand. No. She shook her head. I understand myself. And now I understand you. Luke stood. The old song continued playing. He walked toward the edge of the stage. I arranged the transfers because Nathan needed protection. I put the accounts in your name because no jury would believe a trauma nurse ran an international financial network. Claire stared at him. You planned to sacrifice me. I planned for every possibility, including Ethan surviving. Luke turned. His eyes hardened. He wasn't supposed to. The answer came too quickly, too honestly. Claire's hand slowly moved toward her coat pocket. Not for a weapon, for her phone. She had activated the recorder before Luke forced her into the car. The screen remained dark. The microphone stayed live. Every word was being captured. Luke returned to the table. Call Ethan. Claire looked at him. What? Tell him to come alone. He won't. Luke smiled. He will if he thinks you're afraid. She picked up the phone. Her fingers trembled. Not from fear, from concentration. Years earlier, during my first dangerous assignment after our wedding, Claire and I had created a simple phrase. Something ordinary enough that no one else would notice. If either of us ever said it during a call. It meant danger. Do not trust the conversation. Send help. She dialed my number. I answered on the first ring. Claire. Luke pressed the gun beneath her jaw. She kept her voice steady. Ethan, I'm at the Bellwether Theater. I need you to come. Alone. I closed my eyes. The team around me listened through the command van speakers. Then Claire said, I left the kitchen light on. Marcus looked at me. I nodded. Danger code. Confirmed. Luke leaned toward the phone. 1 hour. If I see federal vehicles. She dies. The call ended. I looked at Marcus. He expects me alone. Marcus checked his weapon. He's going to be disappointed. We entered through 3 points. Marcus led the west corridor. A tactical team moved through the basement. I approached the main auditorium with Maya beside the medical response unit outside. She had argued against coming, then ignored every argument against it. If someone gets shot, she said, I'd rather not hear about it 20 minutes later. That was as close to fear as Maya ever admitted. I checked my vest, then looked at her. Stay behind cover. She raised an eyebrow. That's usually my line. For 1 second, the theater disappeared. The scars, the trial, Claire, all of it. There was only Maya. Then Marcus spoke through my earpiece. Positions. The moment passed. I entered. Luke stood center stage, his arm wrapped around Claire's chest, his pistol pressed against her temple. A row of old photographs burned in a metal bucket beside them. You brought a team, he called. I learned to trust people. Luke laughed. That's new. My weapon remained trained on him. Let her go. Still giving orders. Still pretending this is justice. It is. No. Luke's smile widened. This is revenge. Claire spoke before I could answer. He confessed. Luke tightened his grip. Quiet. Everything is recorded, she said. His head snapped toward her phone on the table. That distraction gave me a clear shot. Center mass. Less than 20 feet. I began to squeeze the trigger. Then I saw the wires. Thin cables ran from beneath Luke's coat, across the stage, toward the old electrical control box. Explosives. If he fell, his hand might release the trigger, or tighten around it. I lowered my aim slightly. Luke noticed. His smile returned. You always were predictable. He lifted the detonator, still saving everyone but yourself. 3 years ago, I would have charged the stage, taken the risk alone, trusted my body more than my team. This time, I stepped back. Marcus, one word. That was enough. The basement team cut the power to the detonator relay. The tactical unit breached from stage left. Claire dropped instantly. Luke fired. The bullet struck the curtain above my head. I moved toward Claire. Not Luke. Another agent tackled him from behind. Marcus kicked the gun away. Luke fought like a cornered animal. No elegance. No charm. No soft voice. Just rage. You think she chose you, he shouted as they forced him down. I pulled Claire behind a concrete support. The bomb team secured the trigger. Only then did I look back at him. No, I answered calmly. She finally chose herself. Luke stared at Claire. Even handcuffed, he tried one last time. Tell them I never hurt you. Claire stood slowly. Her face was pale, but her voice didn't shake. You only loved me when I obeyed you. For the first time. Luke had no answer. Agents dragged him through the aisle. As he passed me, he leaned close. His voice dropped to a whisper. You still don't understand. Nathan isn't running. I grabbed his arm. What does that mean? Luke smiled through blood on his teeth. Vale is already inside the courthouse. Marcus looked at me, then at the theater entrance. The same thought hit both of us. The trial, the evidence servers, the witnesses, hundreds of civilians. We ran. Across the city, the federal courthouse remained open for the resumed hearing. Nathan Vale sat quietly behind the defense tables. Gray suit, calm expression, golden cufflinks. No one noticed the black briefcase beneath his chair. No one saw the small digital display hidden behind the leather flap. The numbers continued counting down. For 59, for 58, for 57. The bomb was not meant to destroy the courthouse, it was meant to destroy the evidence. We reached the federal courthouse with less than 3 minutes left. Marcus drove. I called courthouse security from the passenger seat. Evacuate every courtroom. Now, the officer on the line hesitated. Agent Carter, we haven't confirmed. Vale is inside with an explosive device. Do not use the fire alarm until the evidence servers are isolated. Marcus looked at me. That was the point. Nathan didn't need to bring down the building. He only needed chaos. Smoke, water damage, a failed electrical system. Enough confusion to destroy the physical files and corrupt the servers holding years of financial records. Enough destruction to make every witness look unreliable. Enough to turn the truth back into rumor. By the time we entered the lobby, people were already moving toward the exits. Marshals shouted instructions. Court clerks carried case files against their chests. Lawyers pushed through the crowd. The emergency lights flashed. I scanned every face, every hand, every bag. Then I saw him. Nathan Vale stood near the courtroom doors. Gray suit, calm expression, golden cufflinks. The same cufflinks I had seen from beneath the river. His black briefcase was no longer under his chair. He carried it in one hand. Nathan, he turned. No surprise, no fear, only disappointment, as if I had arrived earlier than expected. You should be dead, he said. I've heard that before. His eyes moved toward Claire. Agents had brought her from the theater under protection. She stood behind Marcus, bruised, exhausted, alive. Nathan smiled at her. Claire, you always did make poor choices under pressure. She stared at the briefcase, then at the keypad beside the courtroom evidence room. Her face changed. I know that lock. Marcus looked at her. What? Nathan uses the same 6-digit code for his private files. Nathan's smile disappeared. Claire stepped forward. His foundation anniversary. June 14, 1998. Marcus spoke into his radio. Bomb team code 061498. Nathan tightened his grip on the briefcase, then reached inside his jacket. I drew first. Don't. For the first time. Anger cracked his calm expression. You think this ends with an arrest? No. I kept my weapon trained on him. It ends with testimony. The bomb team reached the device. The display showed 41 seconds. They entered Claire's code. Invalid. Nathan smiled. Claire closed her eyes. Reverse it. What? He always said the past matters more than the future. The technician entered. 899,416. The countdown stopped. 3 seconds remained. No one moved. Then the device powered down. The courthouse remained standing. The evidence remained intact. Nathan Vale was placed in handcuffs beneath the portrait of a federal judge he had once called a friend. The trial resumed 2 weeks later. This time, there were no hidden witnesses, no secret identities, no more graves. Nathan sat beside Luke at the defense table. Luke looked smaller without his tailored suit, without his controlled smile, without Claire's belief. Nathan still looked calm, but the golden cufflinks were gone. They had been entered into evidence. Ballistics connected Nathan's old network to the robbery that killed my father. Financial records connected him to the Bennett organization. Luke's confession connected him to the warehouse attack. Claire's recording connected all of them. Piece by piece, the life Nathan had built began to collapse. The prosecution called me first. I walked to the witness stand. Claire sat behind her attorney. She didn't reach for me, didn't whisper my name. She simply watched. The prosecutor asked, Special Agent Carter, why did the organization attack the safe house? To kill me, and to recover what? Financial ledgers connecting Lucas Bennett and Nathan Vale to organized crime. Were you targeted because of your marriage to Claire Carter? No. I looked toward the jury. My marriage was used as an access point. Claire was manipulated, but she also made choices. Her eyes lowered. The prosecutor continued, Do you hate her? The courtroom became silent. I could feel Claire looking at me. I answered honestly, No. Her breath caught. Then I finished. I just don't trust her anymore. She closed her eyes. That sentence hurt her more than hatred would have. Hatred still carried attachment. Distrust ended it. The prosecutor played the final recording. My unsent message. The one recovered from the damaged phone after the warehouse attack. My own voice filled the courtroom. Claire, I'm coming home tonight. No more secrets. Whatever's broken, we'll fix it together. The recording ended. Claire covered her mouth, but she made no sound. She didn't interrupt, didn't ask for forgiveness, didn't turn her pain into another reason for someone else to save her. For the first time, she simply accepted it. I never looked at her. Luke testified last. He had accepted no deal. He still believed charm could save him. He blamed Nathan, then blamed Claire, then blamed me. When none of it worked, he turned directly toward her. Tell them Ethan manipulated you. Claire looked at him. Once, that sentence would have been enough. He would have created doubt, fear, a reason to avoid responsibility. This time, she remained still. Then she answered, Ethan was the only man who never made me do anything. Luke's face changed. The mask disappeared completely. You sent the address. Yes. You lied for me. Yes. You chose me. Claire shook her head. No. I chose the version of myself you knew how to control. Luke leaned forward. We loved each other. You loved being obeyed. The bailiff ordered him to sit down. He kept shouting until 2 marshals restrained him. For the first time, no one believed him. Nathan Vale was convicted of racketeering, conspiracy, obstruction of justice. attempted murder of federal officers, and crimes connected to my father's death. Luke was convicted of organizing the safe house attack, laundering money, kidnapping, and attempted murder. Neither man received the ending he believed he deserved. They received the one the evidence proved. That was justice, not revenge. Claire pleaded guilty to obstruction and unlawful disclosure of protected information. Her cooperation mattered. The theater recording mattered. Helping stop the courthouse device mattered. But none of it erased what she had done. The judge reduced her sentence. He did not remove it. Claire accepted the decision without argument. After sentencing, she found me in an empty courthouse corridor. She carried the old velvet ring box, the one I had left in the interrogation room. Her wedding ring rested inside it beside the new band I had bought. She held it out. "I think these belong with you." I shook my head. "No, they belong to what we were." Her fingers tightened around the box. "I kept waiting for you to come home." I remembered the woman who had said the same thing behind an interrogation room door. This time, there was no hope in her voice, only understanding. "I did come home," I said. Her eyes filled. "You just weren't the person I could come home to anymore." She nodded, slowly, then closed the box. I know, no excuses, no request. That was the closest thing to redemption she could offer me. Not love, not forgiveness, responsibility. She walked away without looking back. Outside the courthouse, Maya waited near the steps. She didn't ask how I felt. She never asked questions that demanded an answer before I had one. Instead, she held out the cheap digital timer she had given me during rehabilitation. The display read, 10:17. I stared at it. The warehouse, the river, the stopped watch, the moment my old life ended. Maya said quietly, "You can keep it there, or reset it. The choice is yours." For years, I had believed time stopped that night. It hadn't. I pressed the button. The numbers disappeared. Midnight. Then I reached for Maya's hand. She looked down at our joined fingers, then up at me. No surprise, no victory, just warmth. She squeezed once, and we walked away from the courthouse together. 1 year later, Maya and I lived in a small house with a kitchen that was always too warm. I no longer worked long-term undercover assignments. I trained young agents instead. I taught them how to survive operations, how to trust their teams, and how not to confuse sacrifice with courage. Claire served part of her sentence under supervision. Afterward, she began working with a trauma victim support organization. She never called me, never appeared at my door, never asked Maya about me. She finally understood that redemption did not mean being allowed back into the life she had damaged. It meant becoming better even when no reward followed. One Saturday morning, package arrived without a return address. Inside was my old mechanical watch. The crystal had been replaced, the gears repaired, the hands moved again. A note rested beneath it. Some things should be repaired, others should be released. I knew the handwriting. Claire. I held the watch for several seconds, then placed it inside my desk drawer. I didn't put it on. From the kitchen, Maya called my name. A timer began beeping. I found her standing in front of the oven. Smoke drifted through the open door. "Our dinner is ruined," she said. I looked at the blackened food. Again, "You married a trauma surgeon, not a chef." I smiled, then reached past her and turned off the timer. The old watch remained inside the drawer, ticking, moving, no longer controlling where I went next. For years, I thought surviving meant coming back to the life I had lost. I was wrong. Surviving meant finally choosing the life that did not require me to disappear.